Welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, the Fantasy Clown, along with Trader Dan. Week 1, holy crap, 2024. We're ready to go. We have 2 games in the books. I guess just kind of looking at these games going forward and looking at the 2 games in the rearview mirror, we kind of come at things with our Clownhead community settings, which is really deep. We play 12-man leagues with 12 starters per league. So 144 players. So we're probably not going to highlight the players that, you know, that many other shows will highlight because of how deep the depth is. And when we say there's people that we would start, it's probably because they're maybe our 5th flex or, things like that happen in our leagues. And when you start, 7 receivers, in a given week, then, wide receiver 7 is far different than wide receiver 2 on a team that starts 2 receivers and has no flexes. So, as we kind of take a peek at some of the games, I think it'll be important to realize that. And then we have our settings that tight ends have a premium of 3 points of total PPR, and our running backs have 1.5 points of PPR. So, we do accentuate the running back a little bit, especially if they're pass catching running backs. So, keep that in mind. However, most of our leagues have a lot of receivers in them. So, you are starting wide receiver 7. So that plays a big role. And on the roster, by design, 15 players from each NFL team is the average. So when you start to look at that, that means that when I say 15 players, that doesn't include kickers or defenses. So you're basically looking at quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and tight ends, and we get to 15. So you start to look at 3 quarterbacks, maybe 3 running backs, that's 6, and 3 tight ends is 9. We still have 6 receivers average on maybe some of the worst teams. So then if there's only 2 quarterbacks on the team, then you start to get to 7 receivers. So as you can see that, sometimes there's practice squad players on our team. So when we start to talk about waiver pickups, we're thinking of those real deep names. So I wanted to set that whole stage. And then as I welcome Dan into the show, what did you take away from maybe the 2 games that happened? Thursday night, we had the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. And then Friday night in Brazil, we had the Eagles and the Packers.
Starting with the Baltimore game, I don't think anyone kind of realized that, Andrews was going to be underutilized the way that he was. And it almost looks like it's changing the realms to Likely. But there was reports over the summer that Likely was going to see a little bit more of like the wide receiver action. And, when you get reports, you don't know what to believe, what not to believe. But for those who bought into the hype early and was able to get Likely cheap, I think it paid big dividends. And then the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Trying to pick the number 1 receiver out of that group is going to be impossible week to week. It seems like Rashee Rice is the target guy. But keep in mind, Hollywood Brown wasn't there, and in my opinion, they didn't utilize Kelsey like they normally would. So I think that's just going to be one of those things, week to week, boom or bust for some of those guys on the Chiefs. The Packers, kind of similar to what you saw last year. Jaden Reed was going to have he's going to get his fair share. He's the big play guy. He's made some big plays. If you had him in your starting lineup, you were smiling all the way. Where I get confused is I was high on the Romeo Doubs for the last couple of years. I thought maybe that he would start to see some more of that wide receiver 1 role, but I think they're just content with just spreading the ball out and, giving it to the best option available for the play. I think Josh Jacobs kind of came on late. He looked like he was shaking off the rust early. I know some of the Josh Jacobs shared owners. I'm not one of them, but I know they were getting a little nervous for a while, but he looked good. And then what can we say about Saquon Barkley? You saw the talent in New York, just didn't see the offensive explosion like the Eagles could do, where they could put 2 wide receivers out there so you can't cram the box. I've said it all along. If Saquon could ever have a number 1 receiver like he did his first year with Odell Beckham, that's the biggest thing. They couldn't stack the box on him, and he was just able to pick them apart. I'm not an Eagles fan. I'm a Saquon fan. I was happy to see him score 3 touchdowns. I would have been happy if he scored 4.
Yeah, I mean, so kind of reflecting on that, looking at that game, I mean, I thought we saw a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator for the Eagles, and I think I saw them coming on. I think they're going to continue to get better as we go. I actually had a different take on Dobbs. Maybe it's because I do have some fanfare of him, but I thought early in the game he looked like the target guy. It just they kind of got away from it, and that may happen week to week, game plan to game plan, and I thought that Jaden Reed's plays were these long kind of plays. It reminded me not quite to the extreme of Xavier Worthy, but I think it's important to realize that like, Xavier Worthy touched the ball 3 times in the Kansas City Chiefs. So people are real excited about Xavier Worthy. Maybe you'd say, hey, it's because you're hating on him because I have 0 shares. I did check my rookie rankings, and of the top 25 players, the only player I have 0 shares of is Xavier Worthy out of the rookies. So, I mean, obviously, I just didn't draft him where he was going, but I would say that in my thinking of it is, I think, like you said, it's going to be week to week. Hollywood Brown's going to kind of really dominate. I was kind of impressed though, looking at that game. Number 4 on both sides. I felt like they were the target. Zay Flowers was a target guy for, they just looked for Zay everywhere, and they always looked for Rashee Rice everywhere. And I'm not a Rice owner, so I think I'm saying that really. I thought that Pat Mahomes looked for Rashee Rice at every turn of the of the football, and so I really think that that's where it is. Now I'm not sure what I want to make out of the tight ends. So going forward, would you say you'd start likely over Mark Andrews, or do you think the car accident with Mark Andrews played a role, just kind of like the Kelsey, hey, we're going to go a different direction as well? Like, I feel like maybe the tight ends were the same. I don't know. But going forward, would you say, hey, I'm going to go just fire up likely shares on week 2, and I'm going to bench Mark Andrews? Are you ready to kind of make that line in the sand?
No, but I most certainly don't bench likely in favor of Andrews. I'd maybe start them both, especially in a Clown Heads league. Okay. You got to realize, 5 catches, that puts you in the, with your yardage and possible first downs, almost 20 points minimum. And I think both of them are, with really only one real wide receiver threat, in my opinion, anyways. Likely in Andrews, you're going to be the 2-3 guy or 1-2-3, however you want to look at it. And Henry not being a real big time pass catching back, I think they try to work him in the mix a little bit more than what they did the other day. I think there's enough shares for those particular 2 tight ends where I don't foresee many people sitting likely again.
Yeah,
me being one of them.
I agree with in Clown Heads. You're not going to sit likely. I guess I was more saying, in the places where you have Mark Andrews, you're ready to say, hey, we're not calling you a top 10 tight end anymore. We're saying likely is the top 10, and you're now a tight end 2, kind of thing.
Yeah, it'll be hard. It'll be hard to see. It's tough to see, because they're a rushing offense, right? So which means there's only so many passing shares that can go around.
That's right.
And in my opinion, to me, it looked like every time he dropped back, it was like his eyes were on likely or Zay Flowers, and with that offensive line being so porous, that I could see Mark Andrews taking more of a blocking tight end role instead of pass routes and stuff like that, and opening the field up for likely and Flowers a little bit more, giving him Lamar a little bit more time. But it's tough to tell with Kansas City. Chris Jones is on that team. You gotta have 2 guys for him. So somebody has to block.
And now you're going a little bit more where I was thinking it was a little bit. I think that's would be my takeaway, is that it was more of a 1-game thing. And I guess I want to see Mark Andrews fell off the wagon at least one more time before I'm saying, hey, I'm
not selling for a third today. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not ready to just give them up. So fast forward today, 1:00 games. We got a bunch of them. Right, cool. Pittsburgh, Atlanta. I mean, a little bit of some news coming out on the Pittsburgh quarterback. What are you hearing? What are you thinking?
It sounds like it's going to be a Justin Fields show today, at least for week 1. I don't like that for the other fantasy players. I like it for the Justin Fields owners, because I think they can salvage enough points there with his rushing abilities. A play breaks down or 2, and Fields can get out there. I mean, Pickens can play, right? So he's got him there. He's got Freiermuth. They got a pretty good rush game with Najee and Jalen Warren. Is Jalen back today? I believe
He is, and I did see a report this morning that Russ actually said that he's good to go. But the doctors might take a more conservative approach. That's where we are. So it definitely is true.
We're waiting to hear. We're waiting here. I like the fantasy. I like the fantasy outlook. I'm not a huge Russ Wilson fan. Period. I'm not a Pittsburgh's just a grinded out, try to beat you 13-10 type team. I don't think that that's going to be the way this game is played. I think Atlanta comes out, scores early, scores quite a bit of points. I think Kirk Cousins can be able to move the ball with all those options that he's got. I don't necessarily think that this is going to be the Bijan Robinson breakout game, only because of that tough defense that Pittsburgh has. But I do think Atlanta does come out of this with the victory, especially being in Atlanta today, especially with Russ Wilson and Justin Fields. They're not sure who's starting. There's a lot of things going on in Pittsburgh. I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. I just think that this is going to be too difficult to manage through.
And this has one of my, now you're going to laugh when I say this, but this has one of my sleepers in it. Look out for Calvin Austin today, the Pittsburgh Steelers receiver. As I think you'll see what I saw, a year ago, but without having the wide receivers at full strength, I did see the rookie receivers out today. So that kind of opens the door for Calvin Austin and, to be a player in the Artie Smith offense where we have, and then another person, Denzel Washington, I think is another person that to keep an eye on. You see, typically tight end twos are really strong in this offense, and probably Jalen Warren. These are the guys that we, and it wouldn't shock me if we saw Cordell Patterson get a couple touchdowns. That might be a good touchdown bet against his former team, Atlanta. Like Cordell Patterson, they'll feed him the goal line. They'll feed him
return for a touchdown.
Or just a goal. They probably won't kick it to him, just knowing him. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him get like a touchdown look on like some wildcatty play down by the goal line. Yeah. And say, okay, we got one on you. You should have kept inside. And that's sort of how the NFL works a little bit, some revenge narrative. And I can see a coach that's in a position to help his player achieve said goal, so. And maybe Mikael Pruitt is another guy that, just know that's there and on Pittsburgh now too. So, those are guys that I look at in that game. On the Atlanta side, it will be I think it'll be a tough road for the receivers and, because the Pittsburgh secondary is fairly good. And do think it might be a little tougher for Bijan this first game out and there might be some panic that ensues. Now I have Pittsburgh winning the game. But, it's kind of funny. Like, I would see that there's going to be some panic that ensues in Atlanta. But what I find with Kirk Cousins is he still will throw for 500 yards. It doesn't matter. He'll put his yards up. That's how he rolls. And, he'll just spread it around and he'll make everybody kind of semi-valuable. But I think the Bijan owners will be frustrated with 60 receiving yards, and the Pitts owners will be frustrated with 80 receiving yards, and the London, at 90 they'll say, "Oh, bad game." That's the kind of stuff that Kirk Cousins can throw out there. And as you hear, there's all kinds of yards there, but not. And Mooney has 80, and these guys are all in the same range where there's not any 150 yard receiver type of thing. Out here where they say, oh, it's the breakout. But that's kind of my take on that game. Looking at the Arizona Buffalo game, what are you hearing about that? Beyond, I guess I want to throw in there, DeMar Hamlin gets a first start since his injury. He hasn't started an NFL game since then, so that's real exciting for week one.
I think you're going to see high scoring game. Obviously, there must start quarterbacks there with Kyler and Josh Allen. I think that the Buffalo Bills come out of this victorious. They're the better football team. I think even though that they lost quite a bit from their offensive side of the ball, and they all talk about the defense and snap, but year after year after year, the defense performs, at least in the beginning of the year. And then, when you look at some of the rookie receivers, Keon Coleman, Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm more interested in seeing how they're utilized in the offense, particularly Keon Coleman. We think we know what Marvin Harrison's going to be. He's going to be the 12 targets, today, if not more. But I think it's going to be interesting to see, the deeper tight ends. How's Dawson Knox going to be? You know, what's Dalton Kincaid's role? Because last year we didn't quite see exactly what his role was going to be until, he had some bigger games later in the season. But I think with the departure of Diggs and Gabe Davis is who's going to get those shares? Is Buffalo going to be more of a run-oriented team now? Are they going to be more spread the ball out equally? Is Dalton Kincaid all of a sudden the guy who's going to get 15 targets in Buffalo, and that's why they drafted him? It's going to be interesting to see. Buffalo's got a lot of changes. I'm really intrigued on that game.
I'm kind of wondering in that game, and as you were just talking, I was thinking, I wonder how closely it would resemble what the game script of the Ravens is. Now, keeping in mind that Cam Coleman plays the Bateman role, but there is a difference in the offensive line, and the reason that Bateman didn't get involved as the boundary X was because there wasn't time to throw him the ball. But I'm thinking that he gets the target share of Flowers, let's just say, on a hypothetical basis, and then you have the two tight ends that Kincaid is the likely and Knox is the Andrews, and I'm just wondering if it doesn't go something like that, as far as the target distribution on that side of the ball. And I agree with you as far as Arizona. I got to think that Marvin Harrison, I don't know if he'll get that many targets, because I do think, and I guess this is my own opinion, but I think that McBride has the ability to be the tight end one in fantasy football this year. So I guess I'm kind of throwing that out there, that I think that has a real distinct possibility. And so if McBride is the tight end one, then he's going to get this ridiculous amount of targets. And I
agree. I think that you still got 35 to 40 targets to go around, in my opinion. I don't necessarily see Arizona being able to really run the ball up the gut with James Conner against Buffalo. I think Buffalo's going to make Kyler beat him with his arm. I don't think they're going to. Yeah, I think they're going to make Kyler beat him. They're not going to let James Conner just pound that ball up the gut. And I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for throwing. I mean, Kyler's rushing ability is going to be what gets the rushing done for Arizona.
What about Benson? Do you think Benson has a role today? Ray Davis has a role?
Benson probably more than Ray Davis. In my opinion, I think James Cook is going to be the featured 3-down back. I think what is probably where he should have probably been all along. You might see Ray Davis, or even is Frank Gore active today?
Well, we don't know that until 90 minutes before. I didn't see him.
You might see a lot of similarities, like in the goal line where they bring James Cook out and bring one of these other guys in. But I think James Cook is finally going to get that 3-down rollback that I expect him to have a massive year this year. As long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to be incredible.
That's awesome. I feel like this is the game, in my opinion, that he's got to show that he's a 3-down back like that. This is the game that I'm watching for him.
I think he showed it before. We know how the NFL's going. We're not going to beat up one running back. We're not going to have one superstar, because when it's time to sign him for a contract, they can't afford him.
No, that's right. I mean, there's very few Saquons and CMCs out there that are getting big contracts, or Jonathan Taylors. So I get that. Looking at the Tennessee-Chicago game, the battle of a rookie quarterback versus Will Levis, what do you think?
Yeah. I don't think this is going to be Caleb Williams' coming out party, to be honest with you. I think he drew a tough first matchup. That Tennessee defense is always solid. I'm more interested in seeing what Will Levis does over Caleb Williams, believe it or not. A lot of people fade in Will Levis. I think he's disposable if in their own opinion. I sold the one Will Levis share that I had, but it was more because I was able to upgrade with CeeDee Lamb. So I felt like that was a kind of a must do in a team that could win now. But yeah, Will Levis has got all his weapons, right? D Hop's going to play. Ridley's going to play. Treylon Burks, hopefully he finally shows up to the NFL.
Well, even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter. Okonkwo is there. And I just think that people are very used to the old style Titans, ground and pound. And
I don't think you've seen that.
Now we're bringing in a Cincinnati offensive coordinator to run a Joe Burrow-like offense. So just kind of think about wide open. And if Treylon Burks, and they brought in Tyler Boyd to be the Treylon Burks role, to be in Tyler Bullard role. So you just need D-Hop and Calvin Ridley to be Chase and T. Higgins. And you know what? I mean, I think the running backs might be every bit of as good as together, might be every bit as good as Mixon, and maybe not. Maybe that's a little bit of a sloppy statement. But I guess I think that you could see an offensive line they put assets into that, and the defensive line, they're bringing in guys, signing the veteran free agents. I mean, they're just building this thing. I say the right way, but you don't know that. I mean, I guess I think that Will Levis has a big arm. I still remember the 4-touchdown game, and that wasn't an accident. It wasn't like, he has no ability to do that again. I agree with you. Caleb Williams, I want to see him stay in the pocket and stay in rhythm. I see a guy that goes out and freelances, and while that works in high-end college football, it's a challenge in the NFL because the guys are bigger, faster, and the coaches are schemers. I mean, this is a different game. And so I'm not out here saying Caleb Williams will be terrible at football. That's not the statement that I'm making. What I'm making is a statement that, he's going to have to grow into it. And people like Peyton Manning had awful first years. Trevor Lawrence had a tough first year. That doesn't make them bad quarterbacks. It just takes some time. And I don't know if the coaching staff has time with the talent they build around him. So, this will be an interesting, coming out party, for them to see what they can do with all the talent. And I'm not so sure that the offensive coordinator is one of the better ones in the league that can get all these guys the ball and scheme them all open and keep Caleb in structure. So that's kind of where I look at that game. Moving on to the game that I guess I have no clarity and got scared, I guess, to give you a little bit of something. I got scared out of my survivor pick on this game. It's the New England versus Cincinnati. I was all geared to take Cincinnati, and I changed it because I was like, I just can't. I can't forgive myself if New England actually wins this game, and I don't know that they should win the game, but there's just too much chaos going on now.
Too much chaos in Cincinnati
on game day, and I can't. If they were to punt one, I mean, New England's going to win some games somewhere during this season, and they might want to show that Bill Belichick wasn't as important as he was, or whatever there is. And I think there's a chip in this one game to get up, and then Cincinnati's way undervaluing a game, which seems like a bad spot. So,
well, there's a lot going on in Cincinnati right now. Jamar Chase, with his contract issue showing up late, now on the injury report. T. Higgins is doubtful, so I'm assuming he's probably not.
He's out. T. Higgins is out, and Jamar Chase said he'll decide if he's going to play at game time. I mean, how do you scheme that up?
Right. Which is funny because actually my buddy called me last night, and he was in a predicament. He has 4 quarterbacks, Joe Burrow being one of them, Anthony Richardson, Stroud, and somebody else. And I said, dude, you got to sit Burrow. you might be the only one in Clownhead sitting Burrow today, but I said
Burrow's going to be Burrow. I think Burrow can throw to those other guys and throw it out. Like I wouldn't worry about
between that and Anthony Richardson, or that and CJ Stroud.
Oh no, I'm going to play those two. Yeah, probably most times anyway. To be honest,
you play them. And I'm a big Burrow fan. Burrow can put up tons of points, but I think you're going to see more of a ground and pound. They're going to try to milk the clock, slow play the game, keep it close, and hopefully, especially if Chase isn't playing and T. Higgins isn't playing. I can't see Cincinnati saying, let's rip it. Let's just fire the ball over the field and let Joe Burrow do Joe Burrow things. And it's just so hard because once you don't have to account for his big time receivers, you could just blitz and pound that thing, and you ain't got to worry about somebody beating you over the top. Now it would be interesting to see how the Burton kid does with Cincinnati. I think he's going to get his opportunity today. I think he's going to get his fair share of targets. I think he's going to be one of those guys that went late in the draft.
Trenton Irwin and that other guy with his last name starts with an I. I mean, those are guys that I feel like are
Losafas, stuff like that.
Yeah, those guys are going to get burned, but
But I think it's going to be Burton. I think Burton's going to get his chance today, and I think he's going to be the guy when we all look at it who went in the 3rd round who was like, oh, wow, okay. Wish I had taken him a little earlier. I think he's going to be one of those guys, not necessarily Puka, but like the Jaden Reed type, kind of like, wish he had taken him a little earlier now that he's shown you what he can do. And we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm scurrying here to have a look at my Burton shares, and I'll pull it up when I when I get there. Looking at do you have anybody in New England that receiving core, or are you just fading everybody outside of Ramondre?
No, New England's going to be a tough team to follow for fantasy football this year, in my opinion. There could be a guy or two. Who was the guy last year? Was it Douglas?
Yeah, Demario Douglas. I like him, but I know I'm
he's the guy. I think he's the guy. I think he still is. He was really good last year until he got injured. I think if there's anybody that they're going to rely on and they're going to give the target shares to, I think it's going to be him. And from what I was reading out of training camp, he was head and shoulders by far the best receiver there. But, again, you got to take half of what you hear and go with it, because only some of it's true. So I do think if you need a guy and you have to start a guy, he's the guy out of New England.
Yeah. Okay. In Burton, I have 0 shares out of 53 rookie drafts, and
so you hope I'm wrong.
he went as high as 18, as low as 40. Average ADP was 28. So
yeah, I think that's
right in the third round, and I guess I was picking somebody different at the beginning of the third round. I'm not sure who I was picking.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that's the guy that you probably.
He's the Puka kind of guy.
He's not. I don't think he's going to put up Puka numbers, but I think you're going to see oh darn! I wish I had kind of
more shares of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's the guy.
It could be. I didn't go there.
I didn't get any of them either, but I didn't have any third round picks, so
yeah.
I trade them away.
Houston at Indianapolis. This is a game that I don't have a winner for. I had to pick one, but I don't really have a clear cut.
I like Houston coming out of here. I do think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think it's going to be a lot of offense. I do expect to see both quarterbacks to put up great fantasy football numbers. The biggest thing is hopefully Anthony Richardson stays healthy for more than 4 plays without getting a concussion. Josh Downs being out, I think, kind of hurts. But it'd be nice to see what the Mitchell kid can do. I think he's going to get his opportunity today. I think his opportunity is going to come a little sooner than we had kind of all expected. But I just think that Houston's. I mean, if anybody is a Super Bowl pick out of the AFC that can compete with the Chiefs and the Bills, and I just think it's Houston, and I don't think Indianapolis gets in the way of that today.
So I went the other way. I did pick Indianapolis, but I admit I don't have anything. I guess when I think it's close, I go with the home team and I just roll with it. I think Jonathan Taylor's pretty good, and I think Anthony Richardson. I mean, I'm not assuming injury, I guess, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that Shane Steichen's a great coach, and I just think it's on both sides of the ball. It's a smoke them if you got them kind of players. You just play them. Whoever you got. It doesn't matter if it's Nico Collins, Hank Dell. Keep in mind Diggs.
Yeah.
Mixon,
he throws for 450 yards.
If you have AD Mitchell, if you have Michael Pittman, if you have Jonathan Taylor, it doesn't matter. You're just putting them in. You're just putting your guys in. Like every single fantasy option in these games, you just play them. There's not really. Heck, in Clownhead's games, I got Brevin Jordan fired up in some of the games just because I need tight ends, and
right.
I don't have them. So I mean that's what I guess I mean in that game. This is a game that, like you said, I think it's high scoring. I think it's just unload them, unload the fantasy benches on this game.
Right on that nice Indy turf.
And now we get into the next game. It could be the same thing. Jacksonville versus Miami. But you got in that game, and
so I'm taking Miami. I don't think Jacksonville can keep up with the offensive output. I don't know if it's just me or what. I'm not sold on Trevor Lawrence. I'm just not. I think he can win the games that he's supposed to win. I just don't see him going out and beating the Dolphins. I don't see him putting up the numbers the Dolphins can put up. I am interested in parts of this game with Brian Thomas Jr. I just think that he's. I think he is the next big thing in Jacksonville. He's one of the guys I'm in my FanDuel today. I'm in a ladder. because I think they undervalued him right now, right off the bat. But I do think in a high offense, high explosive game, you'll see Trevor Lawrence take those deep shots to him, and I think that he's going to connect with one or two of them, and I think that's going to propel Brian Thomas over on his over. So I am definitely laddering the rookies today, and hopefully I hit a couple of them. But I don't foresee Jacksonville being able to keep up with Miami right now. Miami's well-oiled offense. It's coming out of the gates. It's going to put up its points.
Right.
Tyreek Hill is going to get his 125 plus yards. Like it's inevitable.
And then I guess that's kind of how I see it. I see Miami just fast. They're just faster than everybody else, and they're just going to come out full throttle. Anxious to see what Jalen Wright how he plays into the being.
I don't know if you'll see much of him today.
Okay, yeah, I'm just interested to see how much of these more speed. I feel like
think he's more of a. I still think that you're going to see the two backs. And I this game gets out of hand. Yeah, you might see him because they're not going to want to risk injury to Raheem.
But every coach says this, so I guess I try not to get too excited. But they're like, "Oh, we're going to put him in the slot. We're going to put all three backs on the field at the same time." I mean, without Odell Beckham, we're going to use him as our 11 personnel. We're going to use him as our slot receiver, and so we'll see. I mean, there's some hype around that. So I'm anxious to see, does that get him 10 snaps today, 8 touches? Does it get him, what does it get? What does it turn into?
I think it's going to depend on the score.
Yeah, that could be. It could be game script. I kind of like Trevor Lawrence. I'm not sure if the coaching is good. Doug Peterson, I will say that Doug Peterson's one of the better coaches in game, managing the game that I've ever seen. So I will give him those props there and think that's definitely a skill. And so he wins the close games. I'm just not sure if this one will be close. That's what I found out about Jacksonville. I feel like Doug Peterson's a really good in-game coach. He's going to win the close games, and he can probably out-coach, the Dolphins in the game itself. But the Dolphins have such a great game script going in and great talent, and then a great offensive guru mind that it might be tough it just might not be close. And you can't win games when the horse is out so far ahead that you can't, they're not a comeback team. They're not he's not a guy that's going to run around like Caleb Williams and just throw the ball all over the yard and ad lib. Like, that isn't what Trevor is. Trevor's a one-time in rhythm passer, and I think that's what has to happen. Moving on to the Carolina and New Orleans game, as we're going to speed up through these things now. This one kind of is a snoozer, but maybe not. I mean, there could be some fantasy value here. What do you have in this one?
Well, I think most of us who tune into this game are all interested in the same thing: is what are we going to see out of Bryce Young in his second year? A lot of us, well, not necessarily me, but a lot of the people who drafted him or who held him are hoping it paid dividends. He looked good in his one preseason series that he ran. They do have some weapons around them. Finally, looks like they improved their offensive line a little. I think they have a chance to win. Only because Derek Carr always gives the other team a chance. If you're going against Derek Carr, you have a chance. And nothing against Derek Carr, but he's just going to make that bonehead turnover or whatever. He's going to, when the game should have been wrapped up, and he's going to give somebody else a chance to win. I think if I had to pick my upset, I think I do take Carolina today. If I had to pick one upset, I think I do go Carolina.
So I did take Carolina in the game. I'm one of those truthers for Bryce Young. I think he's a good quarterback, and I think if he's not a good quarterback, I'm not sure if it even matters, because I think Dave Canales is a quarterback whisperer. I mean, I saw what he did for Geno Smith, which I thought was the biggest anomaly maybe that I've seen at quarterback, seriously. And then I saw him go over to Tampa and do the same thing with Baker Mayfield. And I guess I'm sort of thinking that when it happens once, it's whatever. But once was crazy once. It wasn't just if Baker would have been the first guy, I wouldn't have thought as much about it because he was the number one pick in the draft. But now I'm saying, okay, now you just kind of, wherever you go, you touch gold. You touch these guys. And so, and I see no reason to believe that maybe he didn't do the same thing to Bryce Young. Now, keep in mind, Kenny Pickett looked awesome last year in the preseason. So let's not get too crazy. I mean, I guess that's where I try to humble it a little bit. And I'm not sold on the running back before we get back Jonathan Brooks, there. So I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm not sure if Deontay Johnson is the best separator in the NFL or if he's lost a step and his attitude's gotten him in trouble. I don't know. There's a lot of Devontae Adams in Deontay, a lot of it, but I'm not sure if there's enough of it still, and that's what I don't know. And
he's a great possession receiver, and I feel, Thielen was the same way. I'm more interested to see how the young guys do, Mims and
Mingo.
I'm sorry, Mingo and Leggett.
Yeah. So those are things that I'm watching. I guess on the other side, Shaheed. It's interesting to see what what his role is in the offense, and then obviously Olave and Kamara, and maybe if it's a Jamal Williams. I mean, I think Jamal Williams every other year. He's now 31 years old though on the every other year plan. So we'll just see.
15 touchdowns out of Williams this year.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me to see him be like a touchdown monger like Zeke was in New England last year. If you said he's Zeke in New England this year, I'd say we'd all be very happy with that fantasy production.
Well, you got Taysom Hill that runs a lot of that goal line offense, and you got
yes, true.
In Kamara's just they're gonna run him into the ground. You know what I mean? He's on the field if they have a chance to win, and they're gonna utilize everything they got with him.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, I guess I see that could be, but I'm watching him there. Looking at your favorite team, Minnesota versus the Giants, I have a feeling we're going to be on opposite sides of this game. What do you have in this one?
I do have the Giants winning, and I do only because
like USC apparently.
I'm high. I've never been high on Darnold, and he's got yet to prove. Not that Daniel Jones is much better, but I do think that Daniel Jones has shown enough, especially against Minnesota for whatever reason. In Minnesota, he just loved that turf field, whatever they have there. He's played well there in the past. It's a nice weather day, and he's got Malik Neighbors, and I think he's going to rely heavy on him. And I don't know that from what I'm hearing that many people can stop him. And I think for the first time in Daniel Jones's career, he's got a true guy he can rely on. And I expect big numbers out of Daniel Jones today. I really do. I don't necessarily know that that's going to continue, but I think today, if you're looking for a deep sleeper quarterback and you're kind of in a pickle on who to start, if it's, Daniel Jones or Derek Carr or even Russ Wilson, Bo Nix, all those guys that are kind of in the back end of the fantasy, and you have three quarterbacks, I'm starting Daniel Jones. I think he comes out with a big game. I think Malik Neighbors has a monster game today. And actually Malik Neighbors is one of the guys I laddered today on my FanDuel. I think that he does reach the 100-yard mark. So I rolled with him out, and I got him in a couple parlays too. I think they're undervaluing him. He's gonna get 15 targets. I mean, he's gonna get them.
Here's how I'm gonna differ with you, and this is what I guess this is fun because this is why probably what people will be engaged with is that we never agree on everything.
No.
Yeah, we agree on a lot of things, but we won't agree on this. And I actually took Minnesota defense everywhere I could get them. I believe in Brian Flores. Think that he's pretty good. I've seen him bring guys into the secondary. I actually think that this is going to be an anomaly the other way. I think the Giants are better than what they're going to show at MetLife Stadium today. I really do. I think they're going to show very poorly today, and New York is going to call kind of for the job of Dable after 1 week, and it's not going to be quite fair because I think it's just them getting going. It's Daniel Jones not figured it out quite yet. It's Brian Flores being a superior, one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, and with great shutdown corners, they're going to take a rookie out of the game this time. Because it's his first game. That doesn't mean that he's not good at football. It's just I think they're actually gonna. I think he's gonna become one of the better rookie receivers that we've seen, maybe even beyond this year. But I don't think today's that day, and I do think that Minnesota might win this because I think that I guess I believe in Kevin O'Connell as a coach and just putting Sam in just quick reads. It'll be quick reads. We'll do everything close to the ball. We have the whole complement of receivers. We've got veteran Aaron Jones, and they'll be like, look, you just check this shit.
They
Just
had
check it
Sam
down.
Darnold. They had Sam Darnold. Remember
We're
that.
going to check it down.
Giants pass rush is going to
Now,
destroy that poor guy.
now, here's the other thing that I'm not sure of. I don't understand what happened to, maybe you know what happened to Wake Martindale, but that's the turmoil that I'm talking about inside of like how they got rid of him. You know, like they just didn't like his defensive philosophy. I'm not sure what that was all about. Like it just
They brought in one of the best pass rushers in football, alongside Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence in the middle.
oh, they're good. I mean, that's a
Fabio
good
Perkay.
player.
Their front seven is solid.
But how is the scheme? Like how are they
We'll see.
going?
I mean, we'll see. I mean,
Okay, that's what I'm.
they're an attack. They do attack. Remember, they brought in Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator from Tennessee, who's built that defense year over year over year. One of the best defensive minds in football. I just think that they're gonna. Minnesota's not gonna have a great rush game. They're gonna force Sam Darnold to make throws, and I think that the Giants put enough pressure on Sam Darnold where I don't see them moving the ball well against the Giants defense. Now, part of it, I'm a Giants optimistic. It's game one. I just think that the Giants defense, I got them starting in my leagues.
Now, I am going to use, so when you're laddering people, I am going to ladder my newest fascination, Wan'Dale Robinson, who I think that people forget about. So
I agree, but
he will be a guy that I will. So to give people some sleepers and to give the Giants a little bit of love, I do like Wan'Dale a little bit in this game, just because I think that people don't really understand what kind of vital role he is in the offense when healthy.
Oh yeah,
and I think the attention is going to all roll to Neighbors, and that's how Flo does things. Flores tries to take out your star. He comes from the New England, take away the best player. This is how they do it. So that's the other kind of piece of this puzzle that I think that he's one of the best things that he did, whether it be in Pittsburgh last year or in Miami years before, and now, or 2 years ago, and then in Miami years before that, I think this is what he does, and in Minnesota today. So that's kind of my take on it. On the Minnesota side, as far as fantasy guys, I think you start your guys. And when I say that I think that Neighbors won't have a great game, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a blow-up game. That doesn't mean he doesn't have 80 yards. Like, it doesn't mean that he's not you start him in your leagues. Like, I just wouldn't be using – me personally, I'm not using him in DFS. Like, I'm not throwing him out there in my DFS lineup saying, hey, but I might do Wan'Dale if Wan'Dale's the right price. Like, I think that could be something.
You'll see. You'll be eating your words.
Maybe so. Well, that's how we put this on tape ahead of time. The Las Vegas Raiders, the LA Chargers. This game, this is a snooze game. This is the snooze game on the slate.
There's a lot to be interested in here, though. Like, the people that took Brock Bowers, the people that are sitting on Michael Mayer still. How are they utilizing the two guys? I got a lot of interest in the Zamir White carryover from what he was at the end of last year. Is Minshew the guy there? I mean, listen, Minshew makes football fun. I don't care who he plays for. When he plays, he's exciting to watch. Tuning in to Harbaugh's first game, how does that team look? Is Josh Palmer the guy? Is it going to be Ladd? I think there's a lot there. Yes, it looks like a snooze game because there were two teams last year that didn't make the playoffs. But there's still a lot of intrigue there, especially fantasy value, because there's so many question marks. So I think there's going to be a lot of people who may not necessarily watch the game, but tune into the game.
So you can box score scout it, I guess, for sure. But, I mean, I guess I feel like I have it pretty well broken down. I guess I'd be interested, though, on the Vegas side. Do you think Jacoby Myers is a player in this offense? Or is it just Adams and a running back?
Well, no, I think Jacoby is. But, don't sleep on Trey Tucker. I think that he can be a big part of this offense too, especially as a deep threat. There's going to have to be more than just Devontae Adams, Zamir White, and a check down to Brock Bowers. There's more to it. I'm more curious with the tight end positions here because they do have two of the best young tight ends in football, and I just don't know why they did it, but I'm intrigued by how they do it. Is it a split share? Is Brock Bowers in the slot more as a wide receiver type deal, and Michael Mayer's a traditional tight end? But that, from what I'm reading out of camp, I mean, they got Brock Bowers in the backfield. They got him in the slot. They got him lined up. They got him in the fullback position. I mean, he's a do it all kind of player.
He's Taysom Hill without
the quarterback experience. I am intrigued by it.
Okay. So. And then the Chargers side, I agree with you. I'm interested in Ladd McConkey, but and maybe kind of how the running back shapes out. But I guess I was more saying I think it's going to be a ground and pound kind of. But like you said, I guess Minshew likes to throw the ball around the yard, so I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah,
put it out there.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
It will be.
The next game, and I'm thinking people are overlooking this game a little bit, but Denver Broncos, Seattle Seahawks, and one of the games I'm going to watch with a lot of intrigue this afternoon. A lot of the people are watching the next game we'll talk about. What do you have in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix looked phenomenal in preseason. I'm really interested in how he does. How that receiver role kind of plays out with Denver. I think if Courtland Sutton can stay healthy, I think he's going to be the guy that Nix leans on. But with that said, you got Mims there. You see what he does his second year because he really kind of underperformed his first year. The running back situation in Denver shaky. I know. Are you still big on Javonte Williams? Or you kind of faded that a little bit?
I have a lot of it. I have a lot of them. I didn't give him away. I didn't sell him. I didn't do anything.
He's still pretty young. And I think he's the starter. I do think that he gets the head start, and I think he gets to go.
Sean Payton's tough for me to read. I mean, I feel like he never told the truth in New Orleans, and he didn't tell the truth yet. And I'm not sure. I can see a lot of Courtland Sutton being Michael Thomas. He's not afraid, but he's also not afraid to just switch things up. I mean, we go back in the New Orleans games, like they had Colston that was terrible, great, terrible. Like just I can't quite figure out how they do things. And the year that Kamara became something, he wasn't supposed to be in anything. Like it just so last year McLaughlin came out of nowhere. I mean, I just don't know if Dulcich is the guy, if it's Troutman is the guy. Like it's always and when I don't know what the coach is going to do, I try to feed those guys. I always say that if I can't figure it out, then it's not worth the grief and aggravation of my life. So I own a lot of Javonte though, because I had him before Sean Payton went there. But what I will say is that I do have the Denver Broncos winning this game. I guess an upset because again, a rookie head coach and a whole new system being instilled in Seattle. And I think that at the very minimum, we have a Hall of Fame head coach across the sideline. And he at least knows what he's doing. And so people laughed at him early last year as he was just getting his feet wet in the NFL, going old school the way it used to be. But, by the end of the year, he got everything clicking. And when it doesn't click, it doesn't matter. He gets rid of the people. I mean, Russ didn't have a bad year, but it didn't work with what Sean was trying to do. And so
their personalities clashed.
And Sean's just going to do what Sean does. And that wins in the NFL. And he's going to have a product on the field. And you making him an underdog, I don't think that's going to work out well for an in-division game. Like, I just don't know that Geno has enough to man up on Sean Payton, which would have to be what it would have to be. I mean, I don't know that there's
enough on the road though with a rookie quarterback. I think it's going to be tough.
It may be, but I could just see Sean Payton coming out and game scripting the heck out of all of these whatever and getting enough to win and getting out of there with a win and getting on the plane, going back to Denver 1-0, and now we go. And I mean, I will be shocked almost, but I mean, I'm not playing it my Survivor, but that's where we are. Looking at the next game, this is a game I think people are going to be watching: Dallas versus Cleveland. Lots of storylines there. I want to get through these pretty quick, but the game that I think people are going to really tune into.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Dallas utilizes CeeDee Lamb off the bat. Missing most of training camp. The limit his plays, his opportunities, but I don't expect. I'm fading Dak today. I don't like it against the Cleveland defense. They like to make things ugly.
Oh, they do.
And I think that it's going to be an ugly game. We're all watching to see if Deshaun Watson can bounce back. I think this is a good opportunity for him to see what he can do. But But, it's going to be, to me, it's going to be the Jerome Ford show as far as Cleveland. They're going to try to run the ball. They're going to, try to keep Micah Parsons, from crushing Deshaun Watson and the $250 million that they owe the guy. The receivers, Mari Cooper going against his former team, be interesting to see, how they try to move the ball against this Dallas defense.
Trayvon Diggs is back, right? I mean, Trayvon Diggs is back, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, that's a shutdown corner.
Well, it's boom or bust with him. You either throw it over the top or he intercepts it. But I think ultimately, when it's all said and done, I think Dallas is probably the better team in the long run. But I think Cleveland gets the win today.
So, I don't know what's the longer run, but I had Cleveland winning the game at home today in the dog pound. I mean, we'll hear the return of the dog pound. I think they have enough. I think that, I don't know how well Deshaun Watson plays in the deal. I'm not his apologist, but I just think that, again, Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year, coaching against kind of an organization that can't figure it out against teams that are tough. Dallas doesn't win the games against the teams that are that they can't figure it out. They're still trying to figure out what their running game is, what they are, who they are, and how it all works together. The receiving core, without Lamb being practiced up. I mean, I think it just, the chaos of Cincinnati is kind of the chaos of Dallas, maybe to a lesser extent. And so it's going to go with Cleveland. They're methodical. They have their guys. I don't know if Jerry Judy's good. I don't know if Eli Moore's good, but I think they're good in and of themselves. If we look at the receivers, they're pretty formidable behind Cooper, and not a lot of fanfare, and you can't guard them all. You can't double cover them all, and Njoku's there, and it just there's just enough. There's
enough to go around. I agree.
There's enough there that Deshaun Watson doesn't have to play hero ball. Maybe he will, but he may play it because even though he doesn't need to, but I don't think he needs to. Moving on to the Washington Commanders, Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm interested to hear what you have to say in this one because I definitely have a lean, but it might be because of, I don't know, bias or something. But yeah, what do you think?
Well, I want to see how Jaden Daniels performs. I don't necessarily know that this is a great first spot for him in going against Tampa, but that's the intriguing part to me. To me, this is kind of a boring game. I do think Jaden Daniels does put up impressive numbers only because of his rushing ability, but I think this is a game for Tampa that they staple in and start their move again for another playoff spot. I think you're going to see a controlled game by Baker Mayfield. They're gonna methodically move the ball up and down the field. I don't necessarily know that Rachaad White is the best rusher in the league, but he is definitely a guy that can move the ball with his pass catching abilities. You just get kind of a vanilla offense with Tampa Bay. You know what they got? It's Mike Evans. It's Chris Godwin. And then you got your Cade Otton who controls a little bit of the middle of the field, and then you got your dump offs to Rachaad White. Very similar. What I'm interested to see is how much Washington has changed, and I don't necessarily think that they got the weapons right now to go out and win. So they're going to have to rely on their defense.
I don't know if they're going to beat the Eagles. Okay, so Washington. I don't know if Washington's going to beat the Eagles this year. What I'm going to say about Washington though is this team is exactly like the Arizona Cardinals under Cliff Kingsbury. They're going to be faster than everybody else, and they're ready to go. And if you think Kyler rookie year, then you think a taller version, Jaden Daniels. I think when I look at Tampa Bay, I say Dave Canales was the offensive mind behind the Tampa Bay resurgence after Bruce Arians left, and that's why they played formidable offense. I do respect, Todd Bowles as a defensive mind as the head coach, and he'll blitz Jaden Daniels, but I'm not sure that Cliff Kingsbury hasn't seen a blitz before in his life, and will coach picking it up. And then with Dan Quinn, who I did vote in, I'm in a pool where I had to vote for Rookie of the Year, so I picked Jaden Daniels and then Coach of the Year Dan Quinn. So just kind of know that maybe that's why I have this opinion. It kind of builds my narrative to what I had.
Good start
going on, but I do think that after week one, we might see the Carolina Panthers as the 1-0 Panthers as the leader in the South. and the other teams all finishing 0-1 is kind of how I have it. So looking at it, but so I kind of am building the narrative there that Washington, I do think that Terry McLaurin reminds me a lot of the D-Hop role. They're lining up on the left all the time, and he is that possession receiver. He does remind me of D-Hop and how he plays the game. I mean, like that is what. And then they'll use Ertz like they do, the man crush on Ertz and Sinat, and they'll use the tight ends like they do, and they'll run the ball. I do think that Eckler probably plays a bigger role than people think, because I think that while running backs can fall off the planet, they brought him in with purpose, and he's got the it factor that many other running backs, as they fall away, Leonard Fournette types, didn't have. And I think that he'll be a Kamara light, he'll be that kind of guy, that'll just be this check down Charlie, and they'll turn him into the James Conner role in Arizona. Like that's all he needs to be. And then, but they've got a better version of the feature back in Brian Robinson. So they've got more running backs. So they brought in the line. They've kind of built this quietly, sort of the right way. And when the receivers don't fit, like Dotson, they got rid of them. So I think that I didn't concentrate much on the Tampa Bay side, but there are some Tampa Bay stars. I mean, I think if you got Mike Evans, you start him. If you got Godwin, you start him. If you got Otten, you start him. I mean, these are all players I use and like, and Baker even, until he shows he can't do it, you're going to still.
He was a top 10 quarterback last year. I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, I mean, he was good, but I do think that was Dave Canales. I mean, I guess so. I wouldn't be shocked to see Baker take the step back, that be closer to the midpoint of where he was
probably
before last year, but maybe not as bad as he was in Cleveland, kind of thing. Yeah. So I think there'll be somewhere in the middle is probably what he is. 2 more games, and we're going to shoot through them pretty quick. We got Sunday night tonight, the Rams in Detroit. I mean, a lot of narratives here, but you like me, you think Detroit's going to win this game pretty handily, and
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, Matt Stafford's going to – I just think, Jared Goff wants to show Sean McVay, hey, I'm pretty good at football, and he is. And I think, they've got the team to kind of surround him, where Matt Stafford doesn't have the team. Right. I do expect points, though. I'm interested
in a lot of points. Start them all.
I will say that I won't be shocked if, and I want to get this on tape, is if Blake Corum becomes the lead back, just because – I don't trust Sean McVay. I mean, he just changes whatever he says, and almost think that he made Blake Corum the kick returner on paper, because he made Kyren the punt returner on paper, and he got too much backlash, and people were passionate on to what he was doing. So he just reversed the narrative a little bit just to make sure. But it just wouldn't shock me. Nothing will shock me. It'll be one back that'll run all the time, but I don't know that back is definitely Kyren.
Yeah.
I just don't know that.
I would rather have Blake Corum shares than Kyren shares right now.
Yeah, I just know that this is how things go in the world over there in the Rams. Last game tomorrow night, the Jets in San Francisco. What do you have in this one? And do the Jets have a chance?
Oh, absolutely, the Jets have a chance. They got one of the best defenses in football. And I think that, with Aaron Rodgers, the Jets absolutely have a chance to win this football game.
I think so too. Wouldn't it be interesting? Monday night, Aaron Rodgers going home to San Francisco. San Francisco did not pay Aaron Rodgers to come there. And I'll say lots of bad things about Aaron Rodgers, but pride is one of the things that he has. Yeah. And he's got the will to back up the pride.
Well, he's a great leader amongst that young team, and I think that's the one thing that they lacked last year was leadership. They get it back with him this year. I love Brock Purdy, but I don't necessarily know you're going to see top 6 Brock Purdy quarterback play this year. I think that he's going to take a little bit of a downfall. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I love the guy. I love his story. I just love his personality. I think that, if you ever had a role model in life, he's one of those guys. But I do think that he does have I think this year he starts to come back into the middle of the pack, in my opinion. He still can most certainly bring them to a Super Bowl. But
I agree.
It's going to be more the defense and, stuff like that. But
I actually think that this could be an anomaly game. I just think that there's a lot of chaos going on around the 49ers, getting Trent Williams signed, getting Debo signed, getting McCaffrey healthy, figuring out. Now, they do play good prime time, and I do like Kyle Shanahan, But I could just see Kyle be like, yeah, it's one game. We're getting ready for week 2 now. Like, I can just almost hear the press conference. He's not worried about it. There's no panic in the 0-1.
No.
But these guys, they just ran into a buzzsaw, and the Jets played way over their head, and they're flying across the country, and Jets fans are like, holy shit, we have a great team. Like, I just can see it happening. And so I'll throw it out there. I think they're a pretty good football team, and I think that Aaron Rodgers is always looking for an edge. And this is his edge, as a matter of fact. Like, he has the edge going home, going to a team that spurned him, helping Robert Saleh go back to the 49ers and show that who's the coach. And I mean, like, he's kind of got this power to do all those things and get buy-in of the whole franchise with one Aaron Rodgers Hall of Fame MVP type performance. And
I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I could see the under being a thing. I agree with you there. I think that if you're looking for fantasy points, this might not be the one. But I'm not laughing at the people that started the Jets defenses this week. So we'll just say it that way. Like, I want the 49ers defense, but that's usually not a streamer. The Jets defense this week, I think, is a low-key defense. If you play the Monday, Thursday slate on DFS, which I usually do, that Jets defense is the pick that I would tell you that might make a lot of sense. And be
Giants defense today. I'm
going with Minnesota, but that's kind of a wrap. I mean, we try to keep these things under an hour, and I think we're right at that hour point. So, Dan, good luck today. Fantasy football.
Everyone else too. Good luck.
I got 65 teams going today, so we're gonna see how they fare, and we'll see. Good luck, everybody. We'll come back to you next week.